living a what if life. Like, well, I can't do this now because what if my kids need help? What if my grandkids need help? What if I get sick? So they just don't do things, plan out to do the things, and then here are adjustments or contingencies you can make.
Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking with Zac Larson about how to spend, give, and live with confidence in retirement. Zac, welcome to the show.
Thanks. So much fun to be here with you.
Yeah, glad you could be here. We got connected quite a long time ago through the financial advisory world, but I wanted to make sure I brought you on to talk about your book, Retire Intentionally. Tell me a bit about how you came up with that title, Retire Intentionally.
Well, the contrast to intentional, I think, is accidental. And that's what I've experienced through the years is a lot of people approach their finances somewhat accidentally. They react to things. They deal with it as it comes up. And then they're always evaluating an opportunity as a yes, no. Can I do it or not? And intentionality is a long-term play that says, am I on track? And it gives people confidence to do things that maybe they wouldn't. So the book came about because I wanted to give voice to clients who've done really cool things with their money and who've lived intentionally and generously.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's the hope, is to live intentionally. But let's talk about that accidental for a little bit, because I've run into that too, where a lot of people give me a call as a financial advisor because they thought retirement was going to be in the future, and then they walk into work one day and they realize retirement is today. So tell me what happens. What's the mindset of somebody that is maybe forced into retirement as opposed to having a intentional thought about it?
Yeah, there was a great philosopher. His name was Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And sometimes life does that to us, right? It throws a curveball, it throws a punch. And when that happens, all you can do is regroup. So an intentional plan, and I know you're helping people with this, but an intentional plan just lays out, here's what we're tracking for. And here are adjustments or changes we can make to be ready for the what ifs that can happen. And I want to dig into that concept a little bit as we go today. But we see a lot of people living a what if life. Like, well, I can't do this now because what if that happens? What if my kids need help? What if my grandkids need help? What if I get sick? So they just don't do things. And our approach is to try to flip that and say, plan out to do the things, and then here are adjustments or contingencies you can make.
Yeah, like we said about people are living a what if life. I never heard it really phrased that way, but I like it because I think a lot of people are doing that. What if this thing's happened? And I say, fine, let's go with that. Well, what if it doesn't happen, right? You've got to plan for either side of it. And it's interesting because a lot of the what ifs are lower probability things. Let's maybe plan first for the things that's a higher probability, and then try to protect against the lower probability things is my initial thought on there.
Yeah, I know, Jeremy, you with your clients, you're working through Monte Carlo simulations, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's a key piece is the probabilities, right? That's a key piece of retirement.
And how often do people get caught up? Like they could be at 90% probability and all they want to do is focus on the 10% negative.
Yeah.
And what I think about is if we have to acknowledge that 10% negative, but if we do that, can we flip our mind enough to say, well, what about the 10% that would be really, really good knockout scenarios that could be fantastic? And it's hard to get our brains to go that direction. We want to focus just on the negative things.
Yeah, I remember somebody gave me a call. He said something like, Fidelity told me I could do 95% probability. I called this other place and they told me 96%. What can you do? I said, I can do 100%. He said, really? Tell me more. I'm like, yeah, just don't spend $1. And he said, what? I'm like, that's how you do it. If you don't do anything, it's 100%. That's the 95% is probably a failure in my mind because you were just living for the potential 5% of what might happen. And most of the time you didn't live the life and that's the things that most likely happen.
Well, you just captured the essence of the book then, because we talk about underutilized capital. Like if you have this money there and you're not using it to give and live and have experiences and do things with the people and places you care about, then what's the purpose of having a higher number or a higher degree of probability.
Yeah.
So we focus on shifting from this net worth mindset, and everybody is locked into their net worth right now as the markets are volatile, right? And you see it change day to day, but that's not how we live. We live off of income. Mm-hmm. And then if we can get confidence on the income being there for retirement, then that opens up the third part that I look at in the book, which is impact. It says, what are we going to actually do with it? What are the people, or who are the people and the places that we're trying to connect with?
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting because it's a kind of a chicken or egg thing. It's stuff I've had a lot of people on the show before talk about, like, figure out what you want to do with life first, and then see if you have the income to do that. You got to think of the big picture first, which I mostly agree with. But then in reality, it seems like you almost don't feel the ability or permission to think about what impact can I do unless you know you've got the income. It's like you've got to you've got that. Yes, it's almost, you got to shoot for the North Star, but sometimes you can't even see the North Star until you get that base level of pyramid. I'm thinking Maslow hierarchy needs right now, and it's amazing. Just about everyone listening, I'm sure you've got your food and shelter covered, but it doesn't feel like you've got that ability to think of impact until you know that you've got your own income. Confidence, like that word, confidence.
Yeah, and what you're saying makes me think of Simon Sinek, and he did this famous TED Talk. It's called Start with Why. And I resonate with that so much. Like, yes, we should all start with purpose. We should start with why. But it's hard to wrap our brains around that until we know that we have some of the basic confidences covered. And so although I philosophically or theoretically think start with why makes sense in a retirement plan, we try to shift it first and say, let's get the confidence on all those basics that you can live through the normal stuff. And then that opens up, it gives people freedom and permission to do the other things.
Yeah, I like it. Well, speaking of freedom and permission, what type of things are you seeing people do once they feel like they've got that income confidence? What are the things that they're going out there doing to make an impact?
Well, we all think of travel, right? And so I'm going to just share a quick story, if I could, that I talk about in the book. But my wife and I right now have 4 teenage boys. So life is chaotic. But 10 years ago, life was ridiculously nuts. We had these 4 young boys. We had just got out of diaper training or potty training and diaper phase. No more naps. We said, we're going to take them to Disney and have some fun. And Disney is this hyped up to be magical experience. I don't know if you've been with your family.
Yeah, just we went once, and the kids said, "Can we go back to the pool?"
Right. So we take them to Disney, and it was magical in a lot of ways, but it was nuts. We had kids that got sick there. There was no routine. There was no schedule. It was just all over the place stimulation, and we had illness, injury, stress, and of course some fun. But on top of it all, I felt like money was just disappearing, right? Because it's flying out the door. And I equate that in a lot of ways to retirement, where people are like, okay, I have this freedom. I don't have structure. I can do whatever I want. And then there's this stimulation and there's a draw from everywhere to do things. And a lot of people get caught in feeling like money's just disappearing. So there are experiences that we see people doing, and that's an important part of living an intentional retirement, is finding a great bucket list trip that you want to do or taking family on something. But it's a lot more than that. Sometimes it's them finding structure and purpose in volunteer work. And they say, I don't have to go to my career work anymore. I can have the freedom of time and go volunteer at places on my own schedule. It might be starting a new business. It might be helping a kid start a business, or giving money to family now rather than at their death, so that a child can stay at home with kids rather than having to be a dual income family. There's been lots of cool things like that have opened up, and it just comes with their confidence that they're going to be okay. And then rather than trying to leave around a bunch of money someday, they say, what can we do with it now?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that confidence around being okay is just knowing more about your money. You're going to hear me later on. That's my tagline at the end, is that if you know more about your money, you'll feel better about your money and you'll make better money decisions. And that's a big focus I have. That's why we've done the podcast here, is just to bring out that education about the money. And we're talking about having that confidence in your income, I think a lot of it comes from the education part. I see you've got a lot of worksheets in your book, kind of ways to people take steps towards learning more about their money. Give me a few examples, some quick, easy things someone can do just even right now of like, how can I feel better about this money because I've learned more about what I have.
One of my chapters in there that I love is called I Hate Budgets, because there's not a lot of people that love spreadsheets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do, you're probably bugging the people around you who hate spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. So we try to really simplify the budgeting process. And if people are working and getting ready to transition to retirement, then it's critical to know what's going out every month. And we just have simplified that into 3 buckets. Like, look at your average credit card and say what's going on the credit card on average every month. And the first tendency people have is they say, well, yeah, but that won't happen again, or this won't happen again. And in a way, they're right. It won't. You don't need to replace the water heater again for a long time, or you don't need to deal with new tires, but there's something else that's coming. So stop looking at the detail and just say my average credit card per month is X over the last 12, 24 months, and then take the average. And then the second bucket is, what are people pulling from your bank account automatically every month? Mortgage payment, car payment. We call those the debits. So utilities, there's automatic payments that we've set up. And then the third is cash. If you're going to the ATM for things, if you're paying for help around the house or something, whatever you're using cash flow, and just look at those 3 things and then match up. Do you have the recurring income to cover those 3 things?
Yeah, I like that. I like that, especially because it's an easy formula. It's your credits, your debits, and your cash. Of course, It's credits going out. It's the credit
That's
promise
right. It's not
doing.
quite the true accounting method of credits and debits.
Yeah. You can tell we got a little technical passion between the two of us here for the finance. But yes, it's on the credit card. It's the debits out of your bank account and the cash. That's an easy, because I think what a lot of people do is they want to plan and they believe for some reason that the budget is the first place, and they hate doing a budget. So then they don't do the first step in their mind, which could be easily solved in about 10 minutes of some research. And then they can move on to the more important, fun things.
Yeah. Another simple hack to do that is to just look at what your net pay is right now. Don't worry about your gross income or whatever else. Just look at what's deposited from your employer as a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month. And that's what you need to start by replicating, is to say, where are you going to get that income from in retirement?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you can tell why we get along well, because that's the first part I look at. Say, what's your take-home pay? And let's then look at what needs to get added into that, which is your health insurance and your taxes, because that is taken out of your salary. And so that's a danger with budgets. Even the people that are just on it with the Quicken, things like, I've got 24 months of data. Yes, you have 24 months of data that doesn't involve the 20% that goes to health insurance and the 20% that goes to taxes. So you've got it all figured out on 60% of your budget. And then they're like, wait a second, you're right? They thought they had it going in. Here's their number, $6,000 a month that they need. But in reality, it's like $10,000 a month, because they've got to account for the extras. It's not extras. That's kind of required. The health insurance and taxes.
Yeah, the required basics. And then there's a cool category too that doesn't affect everyone, but for a lot of our clients that we work with, and I know for yours as well, they're thinking about who are the places that are important to me. So charitable needs to get pulled out as a separate itemized category too. And even if they're already giving somewhere to their church or a nonprofit monthly or once a year, we look at that separately, because there's some pretty creative tax planning strategies that we can get into, whether it's looking at their IRAs or donor advised funds or things that I don't know that we've got time to go into that today, but there's certainly reasons to segment that category away from just normal budgeting. And I really dislike when people make general statements, but I'm going to make one anyway.
There you go.
And generally speaking, when you're in retirement, charitable giving should not come from your checking account. It should come from your assets and your retirement plans.
All right, I can support that general statement. I'm on your terms of like, you never say never or always, right? But I think that's a good way to approach things. We'll skip that for today, because I'll put in some videos in the show notes. So we've got some videos about qualified charitable distributions out of your traditional IRAs, donor advised funds.
Awesome.
Great way to give to charity. And you don't even have to change the amounts that you give. You just change how you're giving. You save on the tax benefits. I've often seen people that say, well, just because I saved 3, 4, 5 grand in taxes, well, now I want to give 1, 2, 3 grand more to charity, kind of split the tax savings with the charities. I've seen that
That's
almost every
really
time.
cool.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of charity, let's keep it on there, because you said stories and strategies to spend, give, and live with confidence. And that giving part is often ignored in the financial world. What do you see when people are taking this time? You're in retirement, and you've got this extra ability, either money wise or time wise, to give to charity. What kind of things are the people you're talking to doing?
Well, let's start with time, because that's one of the cool things that happens is we have this freedom of time. And we have clients who've retired from executive level jobs, or they've been nonstop for planning projects, and they just want to go do work. They want to go and use their hands, use their bodies to get things done for other people. And volunteering is such a great way to connect with places and feel the impact of what you're doing. It also leads then to people better understanding a need. So we took our company last year, our team, to a local housing nonprofit. And when people were there to help out with things, they saw the need, and the immediate response was everybody wanted to give more money to help out the work that they're doing. So I really encourage people to get involved that way, rather than just feel like they need to send money. And then you'll be compelled by a need somewhere. So when it gets to that giving part, then a cool part of a Monte Carlo analysis is to just throw variables in there and say, okay, well, I was giving $1,000, but I could throw 10 grand at this, and I haven't changed my probability. And it's just freedom then all of a sudden to dream differently and think differently. So one of the end of chapter tools in the book is it's called Give It Away Now, right? So rather than just preserving and trying to impact people later, to say, what could I give? And we start with the why question and say, why are you doing this? Like, what are the types of organizations that you're passionate about? So don't think of dollar amounts first, but just say, food insecurity matters to me, or a faith institution matters, or social justice matters, or whatever the things are that they're passionate about. Kind of prioritize that, and then start to line up a giving goal to say, I want to give X amount to this organization that aligns with that cause.
Yeah, I like your Monte Carlo analysis idea that you're doing the what if of what if something different happens that's not bad. What if I did give away more? What if I did do something that's extra there, and running it through the analysis? You'd be surprised what you could do that doesn't really materially or change your life. Just giving that process. And earlier when you talked about confidence on income, confidence on an impact, it just popped in my mind that really it's your money confidence that gives you the meaning confidence. I think that's a helpful
great way
thing.
to say it.
People are so much like not doing what they think. They're wishing, I wish I could do something like that. Well, if you've got the money confidence and you've run through and you know you can do it, well, there you go. Now you can make use of that meaning that you want to make.
Yeah, and there's a truth that I have realized and experienced over time, and the truth is that God wants generosity for us and not from us. This is not about more money from you. This is about impact and experience and meaning that is for you. And that's a long-lasting joy that comes from giving. A nice trip is meaningful and wonderful, and I encourage people to do that. But they are somewhat fleeting. And we can have our photo book that we look back on. But when you give somewhere and you know that there's long-lasting impact, and you see a story of how someone's life was directionally changed from that, it brings a different kind of joy.
Yeah, I think it does, and it's interesting. I like the quote. I'm making sure that it gets out on social media that God wants generosity for us, not from us. I've seen that. So we are in an interesting position. Like you're in the same spot, I believe, where I see virtually all of our clients. I see their tax returns, and so I know who they are, and I see their income and their giving, and I would have to say I haven't done a regression analysis, but I'd be willing to bet that the people that have the higher income aren't necessarily happier, but the people that are giving more are the ones that just have a better demeanor, that are just enjoying
Well,
life more.
I know how analytical you can be and that you enjoy that. It'd be a fun study. It's been done though, and
Yeah.
it's out there. Like the science backs that up. That those who give more experience more long-term happiness. In fact, there's a study that says I was on the board at my alma mater, Augustana College, for 8 years, and the president must have said 10 times through that. He cited this study that says those who have a charitable gift annuity live longer.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's causation rather than just correlation. Maybe they were happy and healthy to begin with when they did it, but they set up these income strategies that give them income and also benefit the charities, and then they end up living a long time. So I thought that was pretty funny correlation.
Yeah, so longevity and joy. I see why you gave the giving part to retire intentionally. And that's exactly it. That's the goal, is to be intentional with your money, retire intentionally. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Zac, you retired intentionally for about a month. Tell me a bit about that, because I know you took a sabbatical recently. And tell me a bit about that in the context of, I had another guest on just a few weeks ago, Benjamin Brandt, and his big encouragement is that if you want to retire, try it out. You've never retired before, try it out. Don't take a week vacation when you're 55. Take a month-long vacation. Even do a staycation where you kind of see what your retirement is going to look like. Your retirement's not always going to be on a cruise ship. Though it could be, I suppose. But so you did a trial retirement a little early, perhaps. Tell me about that, Zac.
I love that concept of the trial retirement. And it actually was a 2-month sabbatical. So I had this vision for a long time that I wanted to do it. My parents were pastors, and I saw them get sabbaticals in their careers when I was younger. And I just longed for that time to think about life away from the daily work. And so I heard a great podcast on it, read a book from an author, Pete Scazzero, and he came up with these 4 words. And the words were stop, rest, delight, and contemplate. And when you're going, it takes a while to just stop and breathe and then truly get some rest. And then the delight part is to be out in creation, to be with the people that you enjoy, to do things that you love to do, and just find joy in life away from work. And then contemplate is finally a place where I could start to think, and it took me like 6 weeks to get there, but to start to think about, okay, where's my purpose? What do I want to come back into work and be doing more of? What do I want to do less of to bring value? And if people have a way to take an extended break prior to retirement, that could be such a life-giving process to say, do you love it? But you can't experience that in a week. You can't experience it in 2 weeks. And then eventually I fell into a pattern where I did enjoy some more freedom of time, and I got to a contemplative part. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to help more. But I also realized I had very expensive hobbies. And so I had to rethink my own retirement plan. And that's a section of the book. I call it, What Do You Spend on a Saturday? And on a weekend, if you go out and do things that cost a lot of money because that's what you enjoy and that's what your hobbies are, then you might want to rethink your retirement projections. If on a Saturday you don't spend any money and you get a book from the library and enjoy time to relax and read that, well, then maybe you need way less than you thought for retirement. The stark reality for me was I enjoy things that cost money, and so I better keep working a little bit longer and keep saving some more.
Yeah, I suppose. Besides that part, because this you kind of gave me my next question I was going to ask you anyways, but how did that change that sabbatical at 2 months off? How did that change how you envision spending your retirement down the road?
For me, it did. It made me realize that work is not a negative thing. And if people are lucky enough to feel a sense of calling or vocation to their work, retirement should be more about retiring to something they want to do rather than retiring from their work. And I realized for myself that as much as I love biking, as much as I love golf, as much as I love hanging out with friends, I need more. I want more purpose. And so for me, it made me think about what can I find now to do more of rather than just saying I got to quit work so I can do that.
Yeah, I like it. Good. Well, we've talked a bit about retiring intentionally. What might I have overlooked? What final words of wisdom do you want to pass along here?
Well, we don't need to get technical, but the middle section of the book is all about net income. And
Hmm.
so most people never get past thinking of their net worth.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing is we've got to transition to that to spending power. There's an author and speaker named Tom Hegna who I
Yep.
used with permission one of his phrases in the book. It's called Paychecks and Playchecks.
Hmm.
But uh, that middle section about net income, there is some understanding that needs to be part of a plan that says, I know how taxes work. I can be efficient with that. I can maximize my tax bracket. I can minimize risk in taxes. And so I know you do a great job of that in your planning work and would encourage people to learn that stuff or work with a professional who gets it because uh, it's not just about paying less or minimizing tax, but it's about the freedom of what can you do with that. And I loved how your example of somebody saved some money on a tax efficient charitable gift and that gave them permission to give more. So, and then the last thing that we haven't touched on much is we talked about charitable generosity, but sometimes it's being generous to ourselves and our family. And I'm a big believer too in self-care that like, are there things that a person can do for themselves that bring them joy, that allow them to go push more joy out into the world? So vacations are great. Something nice at home that you value is great. And we differentiate in our planning experiences from obligations.
There you go.
So an experience is a one-time shot. It costs some money and then you move on. An obligation is you buy a boat and now you've got ongoing expenses forever with that boat. And I tell clients all the time, go have fun with experiences, but then let's
Yep.
talk if we're adding an obligation.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, I like both those things, especially that difference of experience versus obligations, and that focus on thinking from net worth to an income. Yeah, that's because I've had people, they walk in, they say, I need $1 million. I want to get to $1 million so I can retire. Well, I do the math. I say, well, you don't need the $1 million. You can retire right now. Well, I just can't retire until I had $1 million. I'm thinking of one lady in particular. I couldn't convince her, but eventually with the market going up, a few years back, I called her and said, hey, congrats, you got $1 million. You can retire. She said, well, now I need 2 million was her response. And that's what happens when you focus on net worth as opposed to the income and what you can do with it.
Yeah, I call that out specifically in my book too, that the net worth number we think in our mind is rarely enough to satisfy us. But when we can get to that net income and net impact part, there's a chance to reconcile them. And then the other thing too is on experiences in boats or experiences and obligations. I talk about the concept of there's always a bigger boat.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Contentment is something I've seen for clients who have retired well. They find this balance of doing fun things, but also just finding joy in their daily life. And that's contentment. And it's not always the people with the highest net worth or lowest net worth. It can be all over the board. But if you can find joy and purpose in your daily life, then it takes some of the stress out of this financial projection and net worth and all the variability that comes with it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good way to go. Have joy in your daily life. Well, I've got one more question for you, Zach. Before that, tell us what's the best way to reach out to you.
The website for the book is retire-intentionally.com, or our company can be found at intentgen.com. It's two words that we talk about a lot, intentional and generous, smushed together. So intgen.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn too.
Yep, and put links to that in the show notes. Excellent. Good. Well, Zach, final question for you. Tell us something about yourself that few people know about. And remember, this podcast is rated clean.
Well, I love to bike. So I never did until I was 40. And now I do a lot of cycling. And last year I started a fundraiser bike ride that's called the Solstice Century. And if you're a little bit crazy, I'm going to use that word kindly, but if people like a physical challenge and a charitable challenge, check out solsticecentury.com for information on that bike ride. It's coming up on the summer solstice this year, June 20th. And last year we had 38 riders that took on the challenge of trying to ride 100 miles in one day. And we raised about $102,000 for charities. And we're going to try to grow both those numbers this year.
Oh, I like it. Well, I think I'm a little crazy in the good way. So we'll see. I'm checking that out
Cool.
as soon as we get off the show here. Excellent. Well, thanks, Zach, for coming on the show. You've helped us quite a bit about how to retire intentionally. I especially love that you added the giving part on spending and living with confidence as well as giving with
Thanks,
confidence.
Jeremy.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach. And thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you will make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil with the Keil Financial Partners. If you'd like to see how we help our clients get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, head on over to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.